Boy, I messed that one up. Guess you get to watch it twice. What's going on, guys? This is Gene Jetson. It's time for another Friday Night Live. Oh, goodness. I'm jumping through hoops right now. What's going on? Look at that. Everybody's already on here. Happy Valentine's Day. My wife and I celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary this week and Valentine's Day. And for Valentine's Day, she got me a 25-foot extension cord from the Dollar General. How do you like that? That's about all I'm worth, I guess. Oh, goodness. But that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm reading the comments. I'm trying to keep up with it on Facebook or on YouTube down here because a lot of times I miss a few comments that I shouldn't, especially the super chat comments. So what's going on, Mark? Man, oh man, look at all the comments. So I'm pretty excited about today. What I want to do right now is at least the first part of this live deal is I want to discuss pre-spawn. I want to open up a map. I've got my actually I don't have it. Hold on a second. I got my lake map all set up right here. And we're going to go and we're going to go through it, and I'm going to kind of show you the kind of things I look for. This is Lake Martin or Martin Lake in Alabama. I think I've only fished it once for like a half a day, so it's not. So I'm doing two things at one time. I'm not very familiar with it, so I'm looking at it like I've never been to it before. Which basically I've only fished like a cove or two down south. But I'm going to go through the map. I'm going to talk about things I look for pre-spawn and basically map study. It's what I've been doing for the last week and a half, getting ready for this Logan Martin tournament. It's the BASS or the Bass. What are they calling it? The Bass Nation Kayak Series that I'm fishing this year. I'm only fishing 2 of them so far. But anyway, so Logan Martin's the first one, and it's in a couple of weeks. It's actually the day before the Bassmasters Classic starts. The awards ceremony for that tournament is going to be on the Bassmasters Classic stage on Friday. So if you're anywhere around Birmingham, Alabama, hopefully I'll be on the stage and you'll get to come see that. It'll be pretty cool. So let's see. Andrew J. That's a good comment. He says, I only watched you to learn how to use my bait caster. Oh, man. So Lake Martin, let's do this real quick. Like I said, I'm probably going to only spend about 10 minutes on this. So hold your comments or your questions. I'll try to keep it. If you got any questions about what I'm doing, I'll try to keep up with it. But anyway, let me click on the map. All right, so if we zoom out, and the thing, you see my little cursor, I know it's really, really small. I've tried to figure out how to get it big. It ain't going to do it. It's really big on my screen right here, but it's really small over there, so I can't do anything about that. But anyway, so Lake Martin is this lake right here. Now, the early pre-spawn, the first places during the year when that water temperature first gets into the high 50s, or mid to high 50s, the first places that I'm going to look are the northeastern parts of, or the coves that point up into the northeast. So like back in the back of this creek right here, any of these pockets that are real shallow in the back, that are facing the northeast. And the reason is the cold winds, when a front comes through, come out of the north and come out of the west. And so these northwestern facing coves right here, and I know I've been saying northeast, these northwestern facing coves right here are the ones that are going to stay warm longer when a cold front pushes through. That one may not be the best one because there's not a whole lot of flat, flat land or flat bottom back there, but this one's really good. It's even got a road bed right here that runs all along here. So, and the creek, it says there's a creek channel that runs right back in there. I don't take a whole lot of I don't trust these lines right here. Yeah, you can tell by the depth that there was a creek channel, but a lot of times they're not perfect. But anyway, so the bass are going to be somewhere out here in the wintertime. In this deeper water, probably up right along here on this little steep drop right there, somewhere along maybe this little drop right here and right along here, anywhere where they don't have to move a lot to go from deep water to shallow water. So they can go deep to shallow with just by adjusting their air bladders and not by having to swim a long distance. In the summertime, they'll swim all the way up on this flat. But then that's where I expect them to be in the wintertime. Now, as the water starts to warm, pre-spawn starts when the bass, hold on, let me change something real quick. Sorry. Nope, I don't like that. There we go. Pre-spawn starts when the water temperature starts to warm up. So as that water temperature starts to warm up from the coldest that it gets in the wintertime, the bass are going to be like, hey, it's time to go breed. Let's go. And so the places they're going to go to are the first places. Now, eventually they'll spawn all over the lake. But the first places they're going to go to are the backs of these creeks. They'll follow that creek channel. Remember, they're going to use that creek channel to move in, because when as you're motoring through looking at your fish finder, or if you're in a kayak, look along these steep banks where these creek channels turn up against these banks. They're going to be right here, and they're going to be right here, and they might even be right here, but most of the time I catch them at the beginning of the bend and the end of the bend. And the steeper the bend, the better. And there's not an S bend in this one, but there is right here. I'll show you right here. So look at how this one runs up against a point. Now that's as much as I can zoom in, but this one runs right up against that point right there, and it's got a big bend in it. So this outside bend, they'll be right here. This outside bend, they'll be right there on that point. This outside bend, they'll be right here, and then they kind of stop as they go through. And if the water gets really cold and starts to cool off, you get a big cold front move through. Typically, they don't move back. They usually just stop where they are, and they just settle down, and they just kind of relax, and they wait for it to warm up again. Okay, and so they move all the way back. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify spawning flats or spawning bays, and all these are probably spawning bays. I love the look of this creek. The one I really wanted to show you was this one over here on this side. This is a classic, really good spawning creek. It's got a lot of little arms with water running into the back. It's got a narrow chute. Boy, I'd be fishing this section right here like there's no tomorrow. All winter long, all the way through pre-spawn, I'd fish that section, because the bass have got to get from out here, or the ones that made it out here are going to get from out here to get up into here to spawn. But this is the kind of stuff I look for. I start with the spawning bays, and I'll fish that creek channel all the way back, especially where it runs up against steep banks or in a bend. Right here, I'll fish this whole flat right here. I'll fish this right here, and the bass will be on that outside bend of the creek channel. As it goes up over here, see, here's a really good one. They'll be, if there's a ditch right here, they'll be in that ditch or the creek channel. Doesn't really show it good on this topo map, but it is what it is. Now, here's your classic wintering / moving in for pre-spawn spot. This creek channel swings right up against this point, and I'm guessing that it probably swings right here. This area right here is key, dude. I'd be dragging a jig here all day long. I guarantee that's hard bottom, just because of the way the creek channel runs through. But the biggest thing I'm trying to tell you is start in the back, or when you're looking at maps, start in the back and go out and identify the places that the bass are going to stop according to the map. I use my map study. I mean, literally, this is how I find fish. And I don't even go to a lake, especially when I'm tournament fishing, until I have learned everything I can about that lake through the map, and then I've identified areas that I want to fish. So with Lake Martin, the places that I would look this time of the year, this week, next week, and the week after, and even into actually further than that, if it continues to stay cold, it's going to be places like here, and then transition spots like right here where this creek runs through. I'm going to look right up along this little bank and just kind of keep an eye, and I'm looking for, looking for life. Now, one thing I've learned recently is at 55 or 54, 55 degrees, that's when gizzard shad spawn. And they spawn on hard bottom, like shell beds, rock piles, that kind of stuff. So if you are going through these lakes and you know enough about your electronics to find shell beds, or you know where there's a shell bed from experience, go fish those suckers and see if there's any gizzard shad on there spawning. Because if they're gizzard shad on there spawning, the big ones are going to be there eating. So, all right, let's get back to this. There we go. Now let's go back and see if there were any questions while I was running my mouth. Do I have any in-depth videos going over mat study? No, I don't. I'm just learning the technology to be able to do this. And matter of fact, I'm probably going to try to use this website that I'm using called StreamYard to do that if I can. I haven't checked to see if I can pre-record anything on here. I hope I can. But if I can do this is exactly how I'm going to do it. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to just go through a map and knock it out, because this is basically what I do when I'm pre-fishing myself. What would be the best lure this time of the year with fish lazy and bite shy? I live in Northwest Arkansas. You'd be surprised the fish really they're not that lazy. My favorite wintertime baits are actually crankbaits that I fish super slow, but I'm still moving them on the bottom. I want them to hit the bottom and I want them to bump into cover and stuff like that. The bite's going to be real mushy, but I love crankbaits. I love lipless crankbaits that I crawl on the bottom. Spoons. These are all baits that move fast comparatively to like a worm and stuff. I'll drag a worm at the last possible option. I mean, if it's really, really bad and I'm just having trouble catching them with anything else, and I fished for 4 or 5 hours, I'm gonna pick up a shaky head worm and I'm gonna throw a shaky head on hard bottom and stuff like that. I might drag a jig, but yeah, crankbaits are my favorite. Jigs are probably second, and then the shaky head. So very, very good question, Steve. Let's go over that real quick. Let me open up my map again. Let me close your comment out. Comment was, what about the flood? Okay, so here in the south, we have had a ton of water move in. Okay, so you got to think to yourself, where on a lake did it get muddy first? Okay, so it typically gets muddy on the main river channels moving in, and the large creek channels, the stuff that has a lot of water. It gets muddy here, and then that mud pushes out into the main lake. Well, eventually the rain stops. I know it's been a while since we've had the rain stop around here. My yard is an absolute disaster, and I live on the side of a valley, so it's even worse down in the valley. But anyway, so this muddies up first. So if the rain is fresh, I'm going to go out to the main lake and look at protected pockets. Let me zoom in. Look at protected pockets that don't have water or creek arm or anything running into the back. And I'm going to fish those until that water pushes down the lake and pushes into those pockets and makes those pockets muddy. By the time that happens, the backs of the creeks and the backs of the rivers have started to clear up. So then I'm going to go to that mud line where it goes from muddy to clear water, and I'm going to fish that clearing water first, and then I'm going to keep moving back to creek. So think about how the water starts to get muddy, and then when it stops raining, it does everything in reverse. It starts to push everything out into the main lake, and those creeks and those river arms and stuff like that start to clear up, and that's where I'm going to fish. And the fish are going to be on the trees and stuff like that. Sean Lay, thanks for the $10, man. I appreciate it. Let me get to your comment. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. It's a really good question, man. All right. Sean says, hi, Gene. Hope all is well. And that it's warmer down south. It's actually going to be 25 degrees tonight, I think. Chicago should be just nasty. Here's some travel money question. What perspective is side scan? It never makes sense to me. Okay. I don't have a piece of paper, but I'd show you. Side scan, you got to think of it this way, is your boat is heading this direction, okay? Side scan is a paper thin signal that shoots out at 90 degrees from the transducer on your boat and comes back. Okay, so it scans a paper thin, literally that thin of a signal that goes all the way out, and the further out you want to see, the slower you've got to go. So I usually go 50, 60 feet out, maybe 80 if I'm just scanning to look for something, and then I zoom, and then I go back to 50 to see detail. And at about 3.5 miles, maybe 4 miles an hour on a big boat. And it just scans a paper thin deal. The space that you see in the middle is actually the distance between your boat and the bottom. So that black space you see in the middle of the image is the distance between the boat and the bottom. And that is added to the 80 feet. So if I'm 20 feet of water and I'm scanning out 80 feet, I'm really only scanning out 60 feet. Okay. I'm going to do a video about that. I've been meaning to, I just haven't gotten around to it. But that's the gist of side scan. You're looking 90 degrees out from the side of the boat, and you're scanning a paper thin signal. And if you turn, that signal gets distorted on one side. So usually the inside of your turn. What do you mean it's cold? Thanks, Joe. What units do I use? Right now I have Raymarine Axioms on my boat. I have 2 9s in the back, 112 up front, so I don't have to bend over to squint and to see little screens. And then on my kayak, I have the Raymarine Element, which I absolutely love, except for it's not touchscreen. That's the only thing I hate about it. I love touchscreen now. I'm so spoiled. Can you fish bladed jig in wood? My lake is wood and rock with little grass. Ugh. I would love to say you can. There are some that are better than others, but chatterbaits are very difficult to come through wood. The reason is once that blade goes over top of that wood, a lot of times the head shape, now the jackhammer is wider, so you can come through wood a little bit better, but a lot of times it gets to right there and gets just past the head and rolls over, and the hook grabs hold as it's coming through. So, oh, sorry. Wayne says, what do you use in 30 degrees but not freezing? You're talking about 30-degree air temperature, I'm guessing, and the water's not frozen. Whew. Jerk baits and jigs usually, and I put a rattle on my jigs in the wintertime all the time. I almost always put a rattle, but I make sure they're on there in the wintertime. So, Dave's back. What's going on, man? Fish Carter's Lake near Chatsworth, Georgia. Much? No, I don't. Also, have you ever thought about doing guided fishing or maybe like teaching a day? I used to guide before YouTube got really busy, and then I had to stop. I love guiding. It's actually a stress release for me. Yeah, I just ran out of time to do it. It takes, because what I want to do is I want to go to your lake and fish it for a day, and then take you fishing the next day and teach you how to find fish on your lake. I didn't even do it the first day, but I like to get out there and kind of look around, mainly for safety reasons. So, but that's, if I ever go back to guiding, that's what I'll do. But I've got to get my captain's license, because there's a lot of lakes like along the Tennessee River and stuff like that where you've got to have a captain's license. And I just haven't done it yet. So, oh, that's miserable, Sean. Oh my goodness gracious. 1 degree this morning. Let's see. That's a good point, Chris. Chris was answering the one about the bladed jig. Use a swim jig instead, because it will come through that wood really, really easy. Just fan that skirt out a little bit, so when it does roll, it doesn't get the hook. So, or not the skirt, the weed guard. Fan the weed guard out. So, Gina, I have an old Lowrance HDI 7. Do you have any sensitivity settings recommendation? For me, I usually, when I had my HDIs, I think I set my sensitivity at about 70% is typically what I did. And I would adjust it. If the water was super muddy, I'd adjust it, because it would always change when muddy water. Or if it was super clear, I'd adjust it just a little bit more up. But yeah, usually somewhere around 70, 75% is usually what I had for sensitivity. Negative 24 in Indiana. Boy, that's a blistering. Yikes. No, thank you. I love the South. Dude, I was in Florida last week. I'm just getting over my tan from Florida. Hey, Gene, what should I be fishing with in Kansas right now? It's really cold. I'm a bank fisherman fishing in ponds, most of which still have a lot of moss. You want to go find the deepest water you can. And if there's a lot of moss on the bottom, Typically what I do is I love fishing lakes that have moss on the bottom because it keeps the fish kind of suspended a little bit. I take a Ned rig and I throw it out into the deepest water that I can reach. I let it hit the bottom. I pop it up and I start to slowly reel it right above that moss that's on the bottom. Just slowly reel it, maybe shaking my rod a little bit to give it a little action. And I just take a Ned rig and I do that. And you'd be amazed, man. It really does work. Gene, I'm having issues seeing fish on my Humminbird Helix 5 using side imaging. And if I see them, they appear as vertical lines. What can I do? Biggest thing is don't worry about looking for fish on your side imaging. One of the things that when you're doing side imaging and down imaging, bass look like little specks. Like I call them popcorn when they're like crappie in a tree. They're popcorn. And they just look like white dots with a little shadow behind them on the side scan. And so I'm looking at that shadow and I'm like, yeah, it might be a bass, might not be bass. What I'm looking for with side scan is I'm looking for structure and cover. I'm looking for drops. I'm looking for bends in the creek channel that have bass or fish on them, because then you can see the little dots on that cover. So if you see something, now understand the way bass live. They love to be close to something, cover. So they love stumps. They love to be around brush piles. They love to be around grass. They love to be on the bends of the creek channel, on the drops. They have to be close to something to feel comfortable most of the time. They will suspend during bad conditions, but most of the time. So if I see a bend in the creek channel and there's fish on that bend, it's more than likely going to be some type of predatory fish. I'm going to go down there and fish and see if they're bass. But yeah, it's tough, dude. That's why I have totally, there's very, very few times I can take an image from my side scan and say, that's bass. It's got to be bass. And I throw it down there and I catch them. Doesn't happen very often. Whew, I got heartburn. I ate Italian tonight. My wife fixed some really good Italian. So not as good as Jim LaDuca's wife, though. Tackle Junkie 81's wife is an amazing Italian cook. Anyway, Big Swim Baits is highly popular right now across the entire country and not just out west. Any chance of a Big Swim Bait video? Yes, I'm actually going to do a video about bull shads here within a few weeks. I'm a huge fan of the bull shad because it looks like a gizzard shad, and that's what the big bass are feeding on right now. And I wreck them this time of the year on big bull shads. So I'm going to kind of do a beginner style video. This is kind of how to start and stuff like that, and how to get a quality crankbait for not that much money and that kind of stuff. So yeah, give me about 2 or 3 weeks to finish with the outline, and I'll get that one out. So can you come to Sharon Harris and show me what I'm doing wrong? I hate Sharon Harris. Oh man, I have fished it. Actually, I only fished it for a day, so I can't say I hate it. But goodness gracious. Okay, I just skipped way ahead, so I probably skipped a bunch of good comments. Let's see. Hey, I just got my first bait caster and I can't get much distance with it. Do you have any tips? Have you watched my video on how to set up a bait caster is the first thing, because that's usually that's the problem, is you're not setting it up properly. I don't know what kind of bait caster you have, but watch that video. It'll show you how to get it to where it's right there where when you cast it, it almost goes to backlashing, but it doesn't, and it gets and you get the maximum distance. The other thing is just practice a lot, but it's all about adjusting your brakes right, and then adjusting your cast control knob to the weight of your lure, and then making sure it's all together, and you'll be just fine. You got to watch the video. I'm sorry, man. I don't have one together right here next to me, or I'd show you. Best line for bladed jigs. I love 15-pound fluorocarbon. I use Izerline. I use Seagar Brazex is what I use, because I'm typically fishing a bladed jig in a lot of grass and around a lot of stuff that can just get messed up. That's where I caught most of my big ones on down in Florida on. It was a bladed jig. So yeah, dude, I love them. Absolutely love them. Gene, I have a Garmin SB9 unit. Never used one of those. Yeah, I have. Never mind. I had one on my boat for about 6 months. I get confused when I see fish on the unit where to cast. Any tips? If you're seeing them on the sides, on the down imaging or the regular sonar, it's directly, that image is directly under the boat. Okay, your down imaging signal that it sends out, and remember I said the side imaging is a paper thin signal. Your down imaging is a narrow oval signal. Now remember, your boat's going this way. Let me get towards the camera. Your boat's going this way, so your image is an oval, a long narrow oval, and that gives you a little bit better image, but it's directly under the transducer, and in shallow water it's not very wide. Your regular sonar is a cone, a round cone, and anything in that cone is going to show up, and you don't know what side it's on or anything else. And if you're going down a hill, you're going to miss some fish too. I love using it because it helps me figure out certain things, and I'm going to get into that in a video. But it's not. Down imaging is so much better. But anyway, so it's a round cone, and you're going to scan over stuff, and it's still directly under your boat. So, whoo, man, hold on a second, guys. I gotta get a drink of water. All right, so Theo, any recommendations for smaller lakes like Rocky Mountain? I hate to give my secrets about Rocky Mountain. I'll tell you what I can tell you, because Rocky is full of big fish. All three lakes full of big fish. It's an offshore lake, and it fishes different than any other lake that I fish. And I love offshore lakes, but this is one of those weird. It just doesn't have a lot of the same type of bottom composition that you see on a lot of other lakes, because it was a man-made lake, and they turned a swamp into this lake, and they dug holes, they dug ditches, put rock piles in, stuff like that. But any points, any flats leading into those main bays, there's going to be fish on them this spring. Any hard bottom, you're going to want to fish. So if you're dragging a jig and you feel that nice little, you feel like you're running through gravel. If you don't know what it feels like to drag a jig through gravel, go out on the road, throw your jig out in the middle of the asphalt, close your eyes and start dragging it, and you'll feel what it feels like to go through a hard bottom on the lake. But you feel that's where the fish are going to be. I like to crank. I'm going to throw a lipless crankbait. I'm going to throw a square bill, and I'm going to throw some type of a crankbait or a chatterbait in those areas. So that's Rocky Mountain. It's most lakes, but Rocky Mountain is one of those ones where you just got to find that hard bottom. So I like my bottoms hard. Let's see. Not sure if you caught any of the MLF where Jacob Wheeler smashed those 22 pounds in 17 minutes. I did. Or is that? Anyway, if so, how did you catch those offshore in the mud? I have no clue, man. I did not watch that. I was busy this week. So sorry, my office is cold, and I didn't wear my shoes downstairs, so I had to prop my feet up, and it shakes everything when I do. Let's see. Hey, Fluke, just got back from the outdoor show, picked up a new finesse spinning rod and some baits. Love your channel. Give me a good crankbait rod idea for under 150. I'm open to any brand. I'll tell you what I use. I use the $80 rods from 13. Those are the fake blacks or the fake chromes. And a crankbait rod for like 1.5 square bills, lighter cranks, stuff like that. You want to get their 7-foot cranking rod. And then for like your bigger crankbaits, your 2.0s and that kind of stuff, and your deeper divers, I like a 7'6". Oh, thank you, Jake. My kids must be watching my live. He brought me some Tums. This is gonna be nasty. I hate these things. But anyway, yeah, dude. Look at the fake chromes, and the fake blacks are like $100. They're really good too. So Jake must be raiding the ice cream because he's in the freezer.
I bought it, my own money.
Oh, he bought his own ice cream. Good deal. Corey, man, thanks for the $2, brother. I really appreciate it.
How do you think I brought you your Tums?
Let's see. Sean Pescatelli says, "What's up, Fluke? Good to be back on. I fish in Florida lakes. Florida lakes are grassy to shallow. Thinking about throwing my crankbaits on mono to keep it suspended as much as possible. Thoughts? I leave my crankbaits at home when I'm fishing in Florida. Those were my thoughts. Chatterbait works so much better. It's like a crankbait that comes through grass. Chatterbait, swim jig, and a paddle tail swim bait on a weedless hook. So that's exactly what I would do. And a lipless would work too, but you got to rip it out of the grass. Seriously, dude, I just got back from Florida myself. I didn't even touch a crankbait while I was down there. Best tungsten for the money? I don't know. Tungsten's all expensive. I'm telling you, dude. What I used to do, and I did it for like 4 years, is every paycheck that I got from work, I'd pull $20 out. I'd go to Academy Sports, and I'd buy me some tungsten. It didn't matter whether I needed it or not, and it went in a box. And 4 years, I had all the tungsten I needed, and I didn't break the bank all at once. So David Fry says, I just ordered the Bonafide SS107. Seems to be the right size for me. Putting on top of my SUV. Yeah, dude, you're going to love it. It's really stable. It's a nice boat. It paddles really well for a 10-foot, 7-inch boat. Real easy to turn. So you'll dig it, man. It's a good boat. It's got the only thing I don't like about it, because I have all the camera equipment and everything else, is just not a lot of storage comparative to the 127. That's why you don't see me in one very often. Jordan fishes out of his, and he loves the 107, and I do too. It's just I got to have more storage for my crap. What's a good knot to tie 2 lines together? If you're tying braid to fluorocarbon leader, an FG knot or an Alberto knot. It's also called a modified Albright, but it's the same knot, or almost the same knot. There's one little difference. Doesn't make any difference though. Hey, Gene, any tips for beginner tournament fishermen? Keep watching my tournament videos. I just sent 5 videos to my editor today, all from my last tournament. But my secrets for kayak fishing, or for any tournament, is prep. Literally, I spend hours map study. I spend hours watching YouTube for any video about the lake I'm fishing, and I'll watch every single video. So if you've made a video about Lake Fork, I probably watched it in the last 2 weeks. If you've made one about Logan Martin, I have watched it. I promise you. So I watch every video I can, trying to get any kind of information I can about the lake. Do map study, and then I always keep track of the air temperatures in that area for up to 2 weeks prior to the tournament. I've got a note in my phone where I keep track of what the air temperature, the highs and the lows are each day of those areas of the lake, and it kind of gives me an idea whether the water is warming or cooling. So, I mean, tons of things, but the biggest thing is prep. And then sit down and always keep a list of what tackle you want to bring as you're watching these videos and doing your research. Anything online. We are so lucky now, man, to have all the information we have on the internet. So, next Gunnersville trip, I start pre-fishing for the national championship a few days after I get back from fishing the Lake Fork tournament. So it's going to be probably another month. A month and a half, probably a month and a half. So Big Red Bass is on. What's going on, man? You got me using a chatterbait. I tell you, it's a great bait. It is. It is. And the trick to any chatterbait, and I'll tell everybody, those of you who don't have a lot of experience with it, is you got to be hitting something. You got to be bumping the bottom, dragging, ticking on the bottom as you're going through, or you're hitting grass. You just got to be bumping stuff. And that's, and that's why I say don't fish it around wood, because you got to be bumping stuff to get bit. You'll see in my videos that I sent my editor today, one of them where I'm fishing the tournament, and actually fishing anytime when I was fishing Florida as well, or fishing Kenansville, catching all those big ones. They didn't bite until I hit a blade of grass or hit a stem on the lily pads or something, and then they would bite. So, oh man. Corey, thanks for the $5, man. He says, I see Chad is fishing the Bassmaster tournaments. Are you, and which, I can't see it. which ones I'm doing all but Logan. I'm doing Logan because it's the first, and I want to win the first. And then I'm doing Lake Fork. So the Sunday of the Bassmasters Classic, I'm driving to Texas. And then Chickamauga, I'm not doing because my son graduates high school that day. So so far, those are the ones that I've signed up for. Chickamauga angler here, headed out tomorrow. Do you have any tips now that the lake is muddy but slowly falling? The bass that were shallow, and they have been shallow this last week, are going to pull out to that next little drop or the outside of a grass line or whatever, but they're going to be in that clearer water in the backs of the creeks and the pockets. So where do you get all of your tackle? Tackle Warehouse, yes. Which reminds me, guys, I've got an affiliate link that is in, I'm starting to put it in all my videos. If you ever want to help out my channel, I'm not begging for money or anything else, but if you go to use that affiliate link to access Tackle Warehouse, anything you buy while you're there, I get a small percentage. And all of the tackle that I use in all my videos, those links go to Tackle Warehouse, and those are my affiliate links as well. So you can click on one of those, go to Tackle Warehouse. So I would appreciate it, but to each their own. If you don't want to, that's fine. Do you not edit your own videos? I do when I have time. But when I have a lot of other stuff to do, like my daughter had surgery yesterday and that kind of stuff, I'll send stuff to my editor just to stay caught up. And I really want to get, my goal this year is to get to where I'm launching 4 videos a week. So that's my goal, and I've got to bust my tail to do it. I've just got to get all the other distractions out of the way. Do you do any striper or crappie fishing? I do a little crappie fishing in the wintertime. I have not had a chance this winter, but that's typically the only time I do it. And striper only on accident. When I see them schooling, I always have something in the boat to throw at them, but I don't target them per se. So thanks, Glenn. Thanks for your comment, man. Best lightweight pedal kayak. I don't know. I don't know about a lightweight one. I wouldn't even be in to tell you. No, I won't even guess because I'll be wrong. The best thing to do is go to Kayak Bass Fishing's Facebook page and ask on there, and I'm sure somebody will have more knowledge of that than I do. Favorite soft plastic for drop shot? What are they called? X-Zone Lures has a drop shot worm. This is the worm that made them famous up north. I love that little thing. That and man, just a finesse worm, a Zoom finesse worm. I'll do it, and I'll drop shot anything. I've drop shot an 11-inch worm before. So, let's see. Hey, brother, you have an opinion on Wilderness Systems attack kayaks? I may just stick with the Bonafide SS-117 if I get one. So I've been in 4 different attack kayaks. And the photographer that showed up to film me the last day I was in Florida had an attack, and every one of them tracked off-centered, didn't track straight. Every one of them, you stop paddling and it would start to do this on one side, or it would go the other way. That's my only complaint. They're great kayaks. They're super light. They paddle really well, except when you stop. And I just never had one that tracked. So thanks, DM. I appreciate it. Don't be afraid of them. Just go throw them. Get a white one, get a green pumpkin one, and get a black and blue one and go fishing. The fish finders I'm using, Ricky, are Ray Marine Axioms on my boat and Ray Marine Elements on my my kayak. Okay. Applications you prefer braid to fluoro, and when it's straight fluoro. If I plan it now, because I've been typically, I don't go switching back and forth a lot, which I really need to, but I use braid for anything I'm throwing into thick cover, grass. I use straight braid for anything, you know, what I call full combat fishing. The straight fluoro crankbaits all the time, straight fluoro. Clear water, I'm going to use a braid with a really long leader on my drop shot or on my spinning rods. All my spinning rods have braid and they go to a fluorocarbon leader. For dock fishing, I like to use braid to a fluorocarbon leader, but a short one. And I'll tell you why. When they're those wooden post docks or the metal post docks, actually no, the wooden post docks, if I catch a fish underneath it and it starts to wrap me around the post dock, I'll actually give it line and let it fight itself till it wears out on the braid and not on the fluorocarbon. And once it wears out, then I can work it back out from around that post and I can get it back in. I'm never in a hurry. I did a little tip with my photographer for KBF a couple weeks ago, or last week when I was in Florida. I did a tip where I showed how to fight a fish when it wraps you around the lily pad stem. Same way, you give him line, you let him fight, and then you pull him up and you can get him out. So. Have you ever watched any of the videos from Fish the Moment and on his lake breakdowns? I have. It's been a while, but I think I've watched one or two of his. Is it everything you buy on tax? Hold on a second. I've got to close out. My computer's starting to overheat. I got to close something out. There we go. Is it everything you buy on Tackle Warehouse? Yes, it is. It doesn't matter what it is. So if I click on a link, buy that lure, then to buy. No, you don't even have to buy that lure. Just use that link to go to Tackle Warehouse. More at the same time. Does it still? Yes, it does. It does. So basically, you just click on the link and go shopping. Is all you do. I'm going to start all my next videos are going to have it down in the description where it's just my affiliate link. You click on it and it'll go to the front page of Tackle Warehouse. So. What is your thoughts on the G Loomis brand? They used to be awesome until Shimano bought them and started making their rods in China. They used to be American made. They were designed by Gary Loomis. They were amazing rods back then. They're still good rods. They're just not as good as they were back then, comparative to everything else. So, hey, Jane, are you going to do any plastic worm videos? Yes, when it comes time to fish plastic worms, I will. That's probably not till post spawn or maybe a little bit during the spawn. So I've done several. Go look up my Texas rig videos, and I usually do a video about the rig that I use for soft plastic. So Carolina rig, Texas rig, drop shot, all the rigs you can think of. How do you decide between using white versus chartreuse versus black and blue in stained water? Stained water, I just use all three and I let the bass tell me, really. My favorite is this time of the year is actually white. Even in the muddiest water, I throw white. For some reason, in the pre-spawn, white chatterbaits, white spinnerbaits really work good for me. And as the water clears up a little bit, I'll throw a little chartreuse in the skirt. And it typically works. Black and blue is usually if it's a grassy lake, like down in Florida, I might try black and blue. If I'm fishing super, super slow and trying to bump like stumps and stuff like that, I might throw black and blue, but typically I'm just going to throw white. Just a confidence thing for me. If you had a choice to make a living out of a boat fishing or kayak fishing, which would it be and why? Woo. Wow. I kind of like doing both. Don't get me wrong, I love catching fish out of a kayak. It's one of my favorite things to do because you really do. It's hand-to-hand combat right at the boat. I just love it. I love to catch fish out of a kayak. But if I've got to cover water and find bass fast, it's a lot better to have a boat. I guess if I had to make a living, it'd be, I don't know, dude. If I wanted to be a guide, it'd have to be a boat because I want to have more hands-on stuff with the client. But if I'm just making YouTube videos and stuff like that, kayak is probably what I would do. But I love my Alumacraft. Oh man, it's having some routine maintenance going on right now, just because we want to check and see what's wearing and tearing on that new motor. So, and I don't think anything is. It's really running good. But I don't have it, and it's driving me nuts. Is it possible for bass to die in winter all of a sudden in maximum 5-foot pond, or am I just that bad in finding the fish? Yeah, they're typically pretty good. The only time I've seen them really have a hard time is when the lake literally freezes for the full, it turns to ice. That's when they really die. So, What lures can be used on a medium, heavy, fast tip? Medium, heavy, fast, I'm usually throwing like jigs, Texas rigs, 3/8 ounce or heavier on the weight. Carolina rigs. What else? Any kind of bottom baits, and I'll throw big crankbaits on it, like the 10XD and the 8XD, those really, really big ones. A swim bait like a 6-inch bull shad, that kind of stuff is usually really good with that. I know there's a lot more, but those are the ones popping in my head. Terry, you're right. That drop shot lure is called the X Zone Slammer. So let me get caught up. Victor, who is Jane? Oh, goodness. Do you ever use bright Cinco colors like bubblegum in early spring as a color? The bass are not used to seeing. I'm on Lake Keowee in South Carolina. I don't typically do it in the early spring, but after the bass spawn, for that first few days after they spawn, I'll use like a bright worm weightless, and I'll jerk it around the shallows and catch those males that are guarding. Typically, I leave them alone, but I remember doing that back in the day. And then come summer is when I throw those purples and those bubblegum and chartreuse worms in the grass and that kind of stuff. They really wreck them then, but no, not typically in the early spring. You said it's not time for plastic worms. What is it time for? Right now, what I like to throw are moving baits. I'll throw a plastic worm when the water is slick calm. But typically, I'm going to throw chatterbait, lipless crankbait, square bill, flat-sided square bill, flat-sided crankbait, spinnerbait, Alabama rig, swim bait, that kind of stuff, and just fish it really, really slow until as the water starts to warm up, I go a little bit faster. So what happened to Fishing Shirt of the Month? Fishing Shirt of the Month, basically for about a year, the company stopped communicating with me. The guy I had made the deal with, I got a hold of them, got them to pay me what they owed me, and then they went dark again, and then they sold the company out from underneath me and didn't tell me. I had nothing on paper. I can't do anything about it. It doesn't hurt my feelings, but it's pretty much out of my hand. And so I don't get paid by it, don't anything else. I'm going to start something new about it within the next year or two, or news that's similar to it. I've been thinking about it, but we'll see. So, but if you guys want some Fluke Master shirts, go to flukemaster.com, check them out. I'm wearing my hoodie right now. This thing is awesome, especially since my office is so stinking cold because I forgot to turn the heat on. What's your thoughts on 6 cents lures? I like the speed glides. I love 6 cents. I fish, they're my favorite crankbait this time of the year. Every time I say flat-sided crankbait, I think about the flat 75, the crushed flat 75 that they have. Love that crankbait. But I watched the owner of 6 Cents. I used to watch him on Facebook. He painted his lures in his dorm room in college. He would sell them on Facebook. He took that money, he reinvested it, and so on and so forth. And I got to watch him grow from ground zero. And I'm so proud to have been able to watch that and proud of what he's done. And now he makes some beautiful crankbaits. They are made overseas, his mass-produced ones. I have a couple of his custom painted ones, and I guard them with my life. But man, yeah, they're great. They're really good crankbaits, and he does care about quality. And not very, I'm not very happy about the Guggen's copying him, but it is what it is. You go to China, that's kind of what happens, and it sucks. I could have sworn I saw you in a local Lumacraft commercial the other day. If it was in the Pro 20, the 20-foot boat, yeah, it was me. So would you explain the Tackle Warehouse discount again? I missed that part. I think I already did, Ronnie. If I didn't, let me know. But basically, you click on my affiliate links in my videos. I really appreciate you guys wanting to support me. That's pretty cool. What's a good pound test braid for swimming a jig? I use 50 is typically what I use, 50 or 60. I like to have a rod that has a little bit of give though, because because typically a swim jig doesn't have a real thick hook. You can bend that hook out if you don't have like a medium heavy moderate action rod or a medium heavy, maybe a fast action. But just understand, and typically what I do when I'm using a fast action is when they bite, I kind of give it to them a little bit and then I just tighten into it. So I don't flex that hook out. So never see anything about floating jerk baits. Thoughts? I will sometimes throw them in the summertime or as it starts to warm up. I say summer, more when the water temperature is in the mid 70s and higher. Mainly because they come back up. This time of the year is when it's really cold. You want one that suspends nose down, or you want one that sinks literally this slow. So we're gonna catch my breath. Dirty Bassfish says, "You're the man, the myth, the legend. Love watching your videos. When are you coming to Miami and fish for peacock bass?" Man, I want to do that again. I did that years ago with Peter Miller, and really fell in love with it. I need to get down there and see a couple of buddies of mine. I got one, Outlaw Morgan. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a kind of a very big political guy, but he's a good dude. He's as real as it gets. I need to go down there and fish with him. I was going to 2 weeks ago, but when Chad Hoover left to go home on emergency, I had to take his place, and so it kind of threw all my plans into a haywire. So what is a good brand for jigs? There's not a whole lot of bad brands. The ones I use are called they're called Seabird Outdoors jigs, S-E-I-B-E-R-T, I believe, or S-I-E-B-E-R-T. I can't remember how you spell it. But Seabird Outdoors. Go to their jigs. Look up the Fluke Master series. I designed all those colors, but I've been using those jigs since he was called G-Man Jigs, like 15 years ago. They're all handmade. They're about $1.50 less or $2 less than most other jigs. And I don't get a dime for them. And so it's all, I'm just telling you, they're really good jigs. Any thoughts on Picasso shock bladed jigs? I just bought a few. I've never fished them. I have no clue. I've seen them. They look really good. Aren't they the ones with the tungsten weights or something? I can't remember. Let's see. DB Fishing says, "Go dogs, man." Have you thought about going to the Lake Ida, Lake Osborne chain in South Florida for peacock backs? I have not. The lake we fished was called E Lake. It was a private lake. We had a guy that lived on the lake that let us in, and we wore them out. But that's the only time I've ever fished for peacocks. So, how do you organize the most used rods on your kayak for easy access? Ordering a couple rod holders later tonight for my SS107. So the way I set up mine on my kayak, and I've got this on a couple of videos, but I'll tell you, is I have the Yak Attack Black Pack, and on the back of my black pack, not on the front. When I turn around in my seat, I want them on the back side of the black pack, so I can still get to my tackle. But I have 3 rod holders, so I have 3 rods going vertical. And then I've got the 2 gear tracks that run along the side behind my seat. And I've got 2 rod holders. I think they are, gosh almighty, I'm so bad at the names with Yak Attack. They sponsor me, and I suck at them. But they are the ones that lock the rod holders. But anyway, I have them faced out at about a 50, 60 degree angle, straight out the back and up just a little bit. So that's 5 rods. And then I have a 6th one that I put in between my legs. I always have a rod up front, and I have 4 or 5 in the back, is how I situate everything. So I can get to any one of them. The one I use the least are the ones that are on the gear tracks, on those rod holders and on the gear tracks. They're a little bit more difficult because I have to lock them down, but that's it. But I usually only carry 6 rods. So on a swim jig, we use a crawl versus a paddle tail trailer. You know what? That reminds me, and I'm going to tell you what I use too. Complete plug of a 13 fishing bait, but this surprised the living crap out of me the other day. So my favorite swim jig trailer, my favorite chatterbait trailer is a Strike King Rage swimmer in 3.75 inches. That's what I use all the time. Now, it's okay with the chatterbait, but the chatterbait blade tends to make the tail not wiggle because it steals the water from hitting the tail. But anyway, I ran out. I only brought 1 package with me to Florida, and nobody sells them. Not Bass Pro Shops, not Cabela. I mean, nobody sold them, so I couldn't find them anywhere. So I reached in my box and I pulled out the 13 Fishing Jerk. It looks like a fluke, but it's got a twin tail on the back, a little paddle, little kicking tails on the back. It sucks as a jerk bait. It is not to be fished like a fluke, because all it does is it darts up and falls down and darts up and falls down. It's horrible. But I put that sucker on a chatterbait and I proceeded to wreck the fish. I mean, they could not lay off of it on a chatterbait, and it really kicked good on a chatterbait and everything else. So I now have a new favorite chatterbait and swim jig trailer, because I use it as a swim jig too. But yeah, the 13 Fishing, the Jerk. Don't jerk it. It's not a good jerk. Oops, but it's a great trailer, man. Oh, look at my wife. She made me some chocolate covered cherries for Valentine's Day. Thank you, honey. Or strawberries. Did you remind me? Thanks, honey. Let's see. But where was I when I was so rudely interrupted with chocolate covered strawberries? The 610 Frog Rod. I own 4. They did not tell me they were discontinuing it, but I know that they were going to start working on a replacement of that one soon. There's a lot of changes coming to the what 13 Fishing's putting out. So what happens with 13 is, as technology gets better and as the carbon fiber gets better and stuff like that, they will make a better rod with, like, let's talk about the Omens. So they'll make a better Omen rod at the same price point, but with the better stuff that's now the right cost for them to make that rod. And so they'll get rid of that old model and bring in the new rod under the model. So I hope that makes sense. But man, that's what I love about 13, is they keep it fresh. Do you prefer composite fiberglass or graphite moderate cranking rods? I don't use fiberglass. There's no reason to use fiberglass anymore. With the advancement in carbon fiber these days, almost every one of my rods are carbon fiber. With the advancement of being able to roll them and make that nice parabolic bend that you need, there's no reason to go to fiberglass. I know people talk about it, but I have yet to see an advantage of it. So, Megan, thanks for the $2. She says, which moving lure would you use this winter in a pond? You know what I would use really is I'd take a little swim bait, a little 3.5 to 4 inch swim bait, put a paddle tail, or have a paddle tail swim bait, put a weighted worm hook on it, or an offset worm hook on it, and throw that around real slow. Just kind of bring it around and close and around cover. It won't get hung up. That's typically what I would do. Probably about a 3 inch, maybe a 3.5 inch. So David Fields, brother. Oh man, thanks for the $50. He's still waiting on Big Man Kayak. Hope to see. He is still waiting on his Big Man Kayak. Man, I need to lose some weight. But yeah, if you guys are at the Classic, grab me, man. You know I'll be running 100 miles an hour. Thanks for the $50, brother. Man, that's incredible. No conventional gear fluke. Only way you're gonna catch them on fly like me is to leave the sissy rods at home. So I don't know if everybody knows this, but I grew up fly fishing. When I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I was up in the North Georgia mountains casting a fly rod. I learned to tie flies when I was like 4. And so I loved to fly fish. It just got way overpriced. I couldn't do it anymore. And so I started bass fishing because it was less expensive. And now look at me. I can't go back to fly fishing. I ever tried treble feathers on crankbaits in early spring? Not on crankbaits, because it typically messes up the action. On topwater I do, on jerk baits I will, but with crankbaits it tends to drag a little bit and it changes the action of the crankbaits. So what's the water like? It's flooded here in North Carolina. It's pretty high here. It's the highest I've seen it in years. I've got a sump pump behind this wall under the house, and it turns on about every 20 minutes now because our water table has come all the way up. And so it's going to take several days for my ground to dry out around here. Have I tried any of the Strike King Tour Grade braid or fluorocarbon? I have not. I knew they were coming out with it, but I just saw it come out on the market just a few days ago. I just got a G Loomis GLX 7.5 extra fast header. What would you be the best for? 7.5, nice length, extra fast, medium heavy. Dude, that's an all around like 3/8 inch or 3/8 ounce and higher dragon rod, like a Carolina rig, Texas rig. It'd be good for pitching a Texas rig into cover. I bet you that's what they made it for. Ooh, I just burnt my toe. My heater's now hot. But anyway, that's what I would use for to pitch and flip. I bet you it's a dynamite flipping and pitching rod, or at least a pitching rod. But mainly Texas rig, a jig, that kind of stuff. I've never even, what is the CFL Chatterbait? I've never seen it. I don't know, Chris. Not a clue, brother. So, all right, guys, I'm going to take a few more questions. I'm going to jump off here. My kids are getting ready to play COD on PlayStation, and I made them turn it off so I could get a good signal. Any tips for largemouth bass on ice out, small ponds with lots of sunfish? A sunfish colored jerkbait all day long, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, dude. On ice out, and that's not from my own experience. That's from my buddies who do it all the time. That is like fire. Use a jerkbait and absolutely blast. Now, if there's a lot of rock and stuff, don't forget to throw a brown jig. Get a brown jig and just drag it around your rock piles and that kind of stuff and drops. Dude, it's unreal once ice out how aggressive those bass are. So, thoughts on the Plano Edge boxes? I love them. I'm really excited to get some. I haven't got any yet. I messed around with them at Cabela's the other day. I messed around with them when they were at iCast. I really do like them. So, Phil, man, thanks for the $10, brother. It hadn't popped up over here on my feed yet, but I see it down here in YouTube. I really appreciate it, man. Anthony, did you ever try that seasoning I gave you last year at the Tennessee Expo? I did. I used almost all of it. I still have a little bit left. All right, guys, I'm going to jump off of here. I'm going to answer one more questions. Says, what weight would you start flipping as a co-angler if your boater is using 1/2 ounce or you throw the same weight in the jig and work it as you if he's using a beaver? If the boater is using a jig and he's flipping a jig, I'm throwing a Cinco behind him, a weightless Cinco. I know I hate to fish them, absolutely hate them, but I'm telling you, I'm going to throw something that's different than what he's throwing, but I can still throw to the same things. Just may not be able to fish it quite as long because he's moving a little faster. But if he's dragging a jig, I'm going to drag a creature bait. I'm not going to throw a jig. If he's wearing them out on something, I'm going to try to copy exactly what he's doing. But I want to catch those fish that he's not catching. So a Cinco, maybe a Texas rig Cinco if he's a little deeper, that kind of stuff. So, oh, trolling. I love it, though. That's a good comment. All right, guys, I'm going to jump off of here, go spend some time with my family, let my kids jump on whatever they jump on PlayStation, go play some COD. But you guys are awesome. I love you. Be sure to check out all my stuff on flukemaster.com. If you haven't subscribed, be sure you subscribe. But like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out on the water, go and catch some fish, and have a great day. We'll see you.